Hi, and welcome to H3 TV, where we meet you every week to share a talk show instead of a podcast. We talk about how do we navigate disruption, change, and challenges in life. I'm Annie Meehan, the host. I'm a keynote speaker, an author, and executive coach who helps people to live in hope through the hard seasons of life. Today, my guest is Maartje, and
Hi,
she is here. Please tell us, welcome to the stage. Please tell us who you are, where you live, and what you do.
I'm Maartje van Krieken. I'm based in New Orleans. The name is Dutch, so originally from Amsterdam. Lived and worked all around the world, and these days I help businesses through disruption. That's why my business is called the Chaos Games.
I love it. Love it. Disruption, our favorite word on H3 TV. So when you think of disruption, since you specialize in that and you use the word chaos, but what do you think of just in general? What is a disruption or what is chaos? What are you talking about?
So chaos to me can be good and bad, and disruption can actually be good and bad. I feel so. Disruption is let's take the negative side is when things are happening to you or around you that you don't feel equipped to deal with, right? And sometimes those things are in themselves not disruptive, but they're disruptive to you because your backpack is already loaded with a gazillion things that are a little too much, right? So a disruption can be a little thing that trips you up, or a big thing which we typically think of.
Yeah, that's right. And what about a disruption in your life? It can be professional or personal. What is a disruption you have faced in your life?
Plenty. The daily one is having teenagers who seem to be unable to plan logistics, right? Put these questions on you. Can you get me here or pick me up? Those are my day-to-day disruptions. I'd say I lived and worked all around the world. And to me personally, disruptions are come in the form of triggers. So things that throw me off and put me out of my best behavior in the workplace. To
Yeah.
me, those are the things that really have the most impact. I think I'm pretty flexible rolling the practical things of life. I can be thrown off by human behavior in a way that's really disruptive to how I'm doing and how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I'm looking for one specific one we're going to focus on. So, kind of looking back, and it can be, again, professional, something that happened in your work life. It can be personal, something that you've gone through in changing and moving to America, whatever you face, because we really want to break into your strategies for our listeners to get to know you and just understand kind of how you navigate. And you're right, disruption can be bad and good. Sometimes we choose disruption and it still may not play out the way we want, or it may play out better than the way we thought. So what's one season in your life that we can go back to?
Well, let's talk about when I moved to Pittsburgh. It was the first time that I moved without a job. So it was the first time that we moved with my husband's job. I'd always been the leading career, and we arrived there. And it was the first place I moved to where I didn't have a network because I hadn't been there for work before or anything. And with 3 kids in tow, people asked me why I moved there, right? When I met them, and I would say, well, and they would ask, oh, why did you move here, for work or for? I said, yeah, for work. And then it would be like, oh, you or your husband's work. And I have to say my husband's work. And then they would stop assuming that there was anything professionally relevant about me. And if I would start to say something about that, then people were like, well, yeah, but you don't have to work. And I'm like, hold on, what's this? To me, that was hugely disruptive in how I felt about myself, how I was doing, my day to day, my feeling about living in that place and trying to start up a life. I'd start up a life in new places every 2 years. I was good at that. And I
Mhm.
struggled for a long time because of the way people reacted to me.
Treated you. Yeah, I think that's a really good example because I think it's multiple disruptions, right? So you're moving someplace brand new and you don't have a network, but you're moving here when you usually have led the income in your home. And now there's this assumption. We start to make up stories and assumptions. So in either the transition of trying to make a new network or the transition of feeling undervalued and, well, you don't have to work and your work. I love being a mom. I love it. It's my favorite job. But I also love working. We can love both and we can be super successful. And I always dream of making more money than my husband and being able to support him. Like I love that. I know a lot of women that are very successful. So how did you, when it was really hard in any way at that time, how did you stay hopeful about your future? You were used to change, but what else? This was a big change.
Yeah, so for me, it was about finding my people, right? I realized that I needed to find the kind of communities where the conversations didn't start like that.
Mm.
For me, it was important. I'm the one who does well with change at home, so it was help get my give my husband the freedom to land well in that job and get underway with it successfully quickly, to get 3 kids into new schools and new groups of friends. And so it was very busy focusing on that. And so all I met were people who knew me as the partner or the mom. And so it was important for me to find my people that were my connections primarily, or that started with me, and that started with the professional me.
I love that. So you said a couple of really good things there, listeners. She said community. She said right away she wanted to stay community. And then she also talked about the people that you care about, your husband and your kids, making sure they were comfortable with change because change wasn't as scary for you typically. And so creating a space for them, but then also realizing who you wanted to connect with. I was just talking about coffee clutches the other day, and I was like, I just don't have time for that anymore. Like, I want to talk to, I love speaking to entrepreneurs. I love speaking to dreamers and visionaries and like, what's next and what are you creating and why it matters and what impact are you making in the world. So that I love both of those ideas. You found the right community for yourself, but are also first made sure your family was set up with a great community. All right, how about healthy? So whenever I talk about healthy, I want people to think beyond, it can be physical health, but emotional, mental, financial, relational health, like you talked about relationships, spiritual health, career health. What were 1 or 2, even 3 or 4 strategies you did every day or every morning to keep yourself moving forward in this new land that you had landed in?
Yeah, for me, it's about face-to-face time with people. So I try to create that. I also realized that I didn't have the easiest pitch because my work at the time was completely random. I just resigned from my corporate career and I was just picking up random pieces of work that dropped out of my network. And and so then I showed up in these new network circles and these new groups, and then people say, "What do you do?" And I'm like, I didn't really have an elevator pitch. I do whatever lands in my lap, which doesn't help, right? And then I had a very unconventional career that people didn't really get. So when I realized what was happening, what I immediately did is that I set up trips for myself. So I went um, in a way that didn't disrupt my family life too much. I made sure that I had some multiple day trips back to places where I had lived and worked, and
Mm.
stashed those completely with contact time with my people and my network to allow for the slow build up in Pittsburgh, because it was one of the hardest places for me to get a new life started, and it was working, but it was going very slow,
Mm.
and I ran out of patience, so I couldn't do that. And I did a lot of calls with friends and peers during the week to kind of boost my morale and keep going and remind myself that what I was experiencing there was not me, that the other me was also still there. I just needed to transport that new me, or find a place for the same me in the new place.
Yeah, I love that. And great answer. Such a great reminder. So many people always want to talk to me about physical health. And I'm like, that's relational and emotional health. That's you saying something's missing. And I need those connections that value me, understand me, and think like me. And so having intentional trips, having intentional conversations. Have you done the love language book?
No, familiar with it, but no.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say you and I have the same love language because it's like what makes you fill up? Is it gifts? Is it acts of service? Is it words of affirmation? Is it physical touch? Or is it quality time? And I love quality time with quality conversation. I think you did such a beautiful job of intentionally scheduling those phone calls, scheduling the trips to make sure that happened. The third area I always like to think about in disruption is happiness. How did you stay happy? Where did you find humor in the hard season of your life in Pittsburgh? Where did you find some humor or happiness?
Yeah, I actually spend probably disproportionate amount of time with my kids, actually, which in a great way. What also happened shortly thereafter is that COVID hit, so my plans to actually travel and go see people were,
Mm.
yeah, definitely disturbed. Um, but I saw real opportunity in that disruption to do some funky and weird stuff with them. So we tried a bunch of new and different things. I have a kid. My oldest kid is a huge storyteller.
Mm.
So I started working with him on some of his little film productions and stuff that he did. So yeah, just kind of finding joy in life again through their eyes and the stuff that made them happy, because they're also at an age that it is fun to experience it with them.
I love that. That's a great place to find happiness and to be creative and celebrate their creativity. All right. If you could go back in time and tell your 20-year-old self, give that wisdom to our listeners that are going through a disruption. Maybe they've moved to a new place. Maybe they're in transition on the job. Maybe their relationship's changing. What do you want to tell your younger self to give yourself confidence through the disruptions that you've walked through?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing is that when I get disrupted, as I said, it comes from me, from people. And then I stop trusting myself sometimes, or the things that I know about myself that are true. And because I'm not feeling good, I put on too much other people's style, so other people's jackets, and listen so hard to some of the advice or what other people say, thinking if I do it their way, maybe that works for me. Um, and actually knowing, if I take a step back, that half of what they do doesn't work. So I should take the pieces from other people that are helpful, because I don't have a solution for those, but I shouldn't take on the whole package, because chances that the whole package suits me, right, is very limited. And I've done that way too often, and I got much better at filtering what I take in, or asking myself when I start to feel worse instead of better, say, hey, what am I taking on that's actually not me and that I know is not me? There's one
Not
thing
mine.
trying stuff on. There's also a whole other thing of assuming that it's yours and somehow trying to make it fit when it doesn't.
Yeah, great wisdom. Do not listen to everybody, filter things, or hear everybody and then decide. Do I want to wear that? Do I want to believe that? And because sometimes people put their own fear on top of us, and instead of being helpful, they're more hurtful. Like, oh, it's not going to work out. I've been there too. It's like, stop it. Don't do this to me. Great answer. I love that. Tell me a story about someone you've worked with that you have really seen transition through chaos, through crisis, through disruption. How did you help support them? What's a success story of one of your previous clients?
Yes. So I typically work with more corporate clients, right? I'd say the success stories for me are, I work with a lot of early commercial businesses where the person who built the business is in a CEO or a leadership position, and the statistics are dire, right? So 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5 are forcefully removed out of those positions in kind of year 3 to 5 by board members or investors, because the trust isn't there. And so I often get invited in by the board members or the investors. So for me, the success stories is where I get invited in by the C-suite itself, because they realize that they are no longer in the right place, that it doesn't fit, but they want to be in the company and they want to have a role. And so typically there's something really dire going on with the business anyway, so it's up or under. And so those very personal conversations to say, well, I built this, I want to be part of it, but I should also change. And for the business itself, it's better if I'm the one that's moving and not, try to find a new investor or do something else.
Yeah.
And so I find they're very private and very emotional and difficult, but I enjoy those trajectories tremendously. I enjoy when people are open to self-insight. I've worked in my career, unfortunately, with a lot of people at very senior levels who completely lack self-insight or seem to not grow in that. Um, and yeah, I think working or making it through disruptions or helping people through disruptions, if there's not a little bit of self-insight or at least willingness to change or accept some hard truths,
Yeah.
then you're not gonna do anything, right?
And you're not going to stay. You're going to lose your
No.
job.
Yeah, so it's about accepting that it's gonna be messy and that despite our best intentions, we fail and we're flawed, and that's the beauty of humanity too.
That's right. I always feel like when you're working with executives at that C-suite level, if they're not a little self-reflective and have like some are brilliant in their mind, but they don't have great emotional intelligence, and they're not willing to take the time to have self-reflection, exactly what you're talking about, that they are in their own way. They hurt themselves instead of they get so mad that somebody doesn't love them that they can't listen and learn and grow and stay. And then they lose their job. So I love that answer. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it brings it a little bit back to what we talked about earlier, though, because what then happens is that people see it, but somehow say, well, but they're at that level, so it must be me who sees it wrong. That's intriguing, right? That we excuse it for them sometimes.
That's right. Their title excuses it. We excuse it for them and they excuse it. So all interesting. And that's why they need people like us to come in and help them gently have some self-reflection and emotional intelligence. Great answer. Do you have a story that if you could talk to someone right now facing a disruption, they have moved, what would you want to tell them? Maybe not a story, but what would you want to say to them in the midst of their chaos, in the midst of their challenge? So what do you call your company? The Chaos
Games.
Games.
Yes.
Okay.
So the main thing to me about if you are experiencing disruption or negative chaos, the tendency is to wait out the storm, right? If we feel that we're in that level of turbulence, it's so overwhelming. We default as humans and as organizations to, okay, maybe if we just sit tight or hold on tight, it will pass. And the answer is don't. Because if you wait for it to pass, then there's a new storm or another situation on the horizon and you drift, right? If you are on a trajectory or trying to get somewhere, or you know where your happiness lies, and you face a storm or disruption, and then you just wait it out, nothing happens. You don't get out of the storm. You don't get closer to your goals or a better place. And whatever is happening around you is going to dictate what happens to you. And I get it, that's really hard, but there are things you can control. If you're sailing a storm, so I'm a sailor. If you're sailing in a storm, I can't change the weather, but I can pick up more news forecasts. I can check what kind of crew I have. I can see if I can find a place along the route somewhere, a harbor to take shelter for a little bit and take pause to re-energize. There's all sorts of things I can do. So work on those. If you're in disruption, it's important because action also feels empowering. So if you then start to do things again, you will immediately feel better, even if you're not out of the situation, because you will stop feeling so helpless and out of control.
Yeah, beautiful. Love that answer. Beautiful and beautiful analogy. I always love pictures. I see the sailboat. I see the shelter, the pause. Beautiful. So I know people are going to want to learn more about you and connect with you. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. If you just type in my first name, Maartje, I'm the first one that appears. So that's the easiest place to find me with a name like mine. Any combination of Maartje and chaos will get you there too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with me. Thank you to my listeners. Always appreciate you, appreciate your wisdom. And please feel free to ask us any questions or comments. We will both reply and encourage you on your journey. Take care. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is think about how we can support people and that it's okay to say no, but also like, I'll be your accountability partner, but all I can give you is a text every other Tuesday. I can't walk with you twice a week. My plate is full too. It is more respectful to say, I'm sorry, I can't, than to say yes and set someone up to fail. Does that make sense? All right. I want you to think about health. Next time someone says, are you healthy? I want you to think about all 7 of these areas, not just my physical health, not just a number on the scale, because I never helped the thousands of clients I worked with lose weight because I didn't care about a number on a scale, but I helped clients change their habits, change their self-talk, and a side effect was weight loss. I helped them get their finances and their relationships in order. I helped them with what they said about themselves to themselves, and it changed everything. But my favorite area of your hearts is happiness. And so what I'd like you to do is think about what makes you happy. And you can write it in that heart or write it in the back. I love for you to come up with at least 10 things that make you happy, from rainbows to sunshine, from fresh baked cookies to cuddles with puppies, whatever it is that brings you happiness.